Setting up. Okay, you should be all set to go.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry we're a little late. We are having a few technical difficulties that we just ran through. Hopefully everyone stayed along. Welcome to the first annual Northborough Food Safety webinar, I guess you could call it. We want to do something like this every year to touch base with everybody, to give everybody a forum to reach out to me, to have any conversations or communications between the health department and all the various food permit holders we have. So this one, we're just going to start, I think, with just a basic recap and overview of what food safety is, what our expectations are, and what goes into sort of our inspections. So that's the purpose why we're here today. Joining with me today is Isabella Caruso, who's the new Director of Health and Human Services here in Northborough. If you are unfamiliar, earlier this year, the Health Department and the Family and Youth Services Departments combined to offer a greater range of services to the town of Northborough, and Isabella has become our new director. So welcome. She's here helping me run the webinar. So this isn't going to take super duper long unless I talk too fast. I appreciate everyone's time again. I know it's right around graduation time, and I'm sure everyone's pretty busy. So we'll try to go through this as much as I can. And forgive my phone, I can't stop it from ringing. Emily, would you go to the next slide, please? And just a quick recap of what we're going to talk about here. We're obviously already talking about why we're here, a little bit about the health department, and then going to go right into the inspections and all the different categories and what we're looking for throughout. Emily, please. So for everyone who has been around this town, we know we have a pretty robust health department. A lot of you knew Kristen Black and the job she did throughout COVID and everything else. And Isabella has been here now in charge for about 7 months almost, and has taken a great role so far. As you can see on this slide, public health and the role of the health department is pretty robust. And somewhere down over there says food safety and restaurants, which is obviously what all of you are from and why we're here today. Emily, please. I wouldn't want to take a good picture of me, but that's an inspector somewhere. So just understanding who I am and where we come from. I should have met all of you. By now, it's been almost 2 years since I've been doing this job. So I've been in and out of your establishments for the past year and a half at least. But the main goal of the health inspector is to protect public health, protect the health and well-being of everybody that is in our community, everyone that you may serve, and everyone from outside, whether they're traveling or not. The goal is to work together to make sure where you're educated and we're working together to maintain the health and wellness and happiness of your customers and your employees. And then we'll partner to work together to continue to maintain safe food service environments and everything. Emily? All right, so we'll start with a bit of the nitty-gritty that most of you should be aware of already. The federal the Food and Drug Administration updates the actual food code every few years. So most of Massachusetts and Northborough are currently operating the 2013 food code. There has been a 2017 and 2021 with various updates, but it takes a lot of work to go through a town to reapprove. And so we're going to stick with the 2013 for a little while. And then we've also added the Massachusetts Merged Food Code, which was from 2018, that added some state-specific information, such as residential kitchens and some other things about the grease traps and so forth that are specific to Massachusetts. I'm not sure if everyone in town, Northborough, got a copy of the food safety binder. I know some of you have reached out. I've given it to some of you. I hope everyone has it. In there was a copy of the food code so everyone can reference it as needed. The remaining inspections I have for the next few months, I'll be looking for it. And if you don't have one, I'll make a note and we'll supply it for you. Emily, please. Some of you have seen that form before. No one likes that form. That's why we don't use it, but hard to take a picture of our current one. This is more fun. So this is the nice 3-part inspection form that everyone used to use. As a former operator, I didn't like it because it was hard to read. No inspector has good handwriting. They're worse than doctors. And they didn't always quote the code right. So as you all have seen now, I use a software from a company called Relevant. They do a fantastic job putting together these inspection forms for me. They give the opportunity for me to take photographs. So there's a lot less discussion and it's clear what we're looking at. so that we can all align and be on the same page. In addition to highlighting the portion of the code that I'm referencing for the violation of the exception, which I find incredibly helpful. So again, so there's no discussion, so that we're very clear that you and I know exactly what we're looking for and where we are. Emily? So just the briefest of overviews, which you all should know, because I'm pretty sure everyone on this call has either have their ServSafe or Manager 360 or whatever their manager certification is. So you all know what food safety is. You all should know what we're looking for. But as I said, just give me a few minutes to recap. So food safety, and I'll simply read it, refers to the proper food handling procedures applied during food preparation, processing, storage, and distribution. So it's pretty much the responsibility of every permit holder, manager, even employee to monitor that food safety from the minute that first delivery truck pulls up through unloading, preparation, ordering, delivery to the guests, and when the guest walks out the door. So you have a long time of responsibilities there. Some of your food can be there for a little while. So very important to remain vigilant from the get-go, from the start of everything all the way through the end. Emily? So again, for everyone who knows, there's 3 basic types of contamination that can cause illness, foodborne illness, or any other discomfort or lack of wellness and health in your customers. They're biological, physical, and chemical. Chemical contamination is obviously the sanitizer or bleach or something like that into the food, or it could have been something in the manufacturing end. That's not a huge concern. I haven't dealt with it at all here in Northborough. Physical contamination is, just as it says, hair in the food or fingernail or a Band-Aid or something awful, or again, something in the manufacturing process. But those are not things that generally the stores can control. So what we're going to do is focus on the biological contaminations, which cause the majority of foodborne illnesses. Emily? So biological contamination simply is when food becomes contaminated by living organisms or from the substances that are produced by those organisms. So most of your biological contaminations in food they're already there when they enter your restaurant. So it's your responsibility as the permit holder to mitigate those organisms and the contaminations, excuse me, to be able to prevent anyone from getting sick. And that's through all the processes you follow through: the cooking, the thawing, holding, preparation, and so forth. So we'll delve into those a little bit more on the next few slides. Emily? So for those of you who have been around food for a long time, they used to be called critical violations. Now they've changed the name a few years ago to call them priority violations. These are the violations that the FDA Food Code, the Massachusetts Food Code, and general common sense have decided are the highest risk activities that are going to cause the most contamination and the most illnesses for your customers in our communities. You can identify probably most of them on the slides. We'll talk about them in depth a little bit more, but obviously you see someone not wearing gloves. You see some lovely raw chicken there. Buffets, which are always a problem. We have some unwrapped food in one of the pictures. So obviously there's a lot in all of your establishments that need to be focused on. So this will just quickly touch base on the ones that create most of the problems. Emily? So as I mentioned, there's the 5 categories within the foundation, priority foundation violations. It's personal hygiene, which goes from hand washing, hair nets, jewelry, and so forth. But if you also have a violation there, the way the food code groups it, that could also be not having an adequate person in charge or knowledgeable person, someone who doesn't have their ServSafe. That goes into that hygiene category. Obviously, preparing food is the cooking, storing, hot holding, cold holding, cooling, thawing, anything that goes around the preparation from beginning to end. Storing food, we all know about the hierarchy of food, that we keep the ready to eat food in the top all the way down to the chicken on the bottom. Labeling the food properly and making sure that it's all covered and safe in storage. Cleaning and sanitizing goes without saying. We want to make sure that all of our food, non-food contact services, food itself, employees, everything is clean. Purchasing safe food is not much of an issue in North America, excuse me, in Northborough, but certainly in other parts of the country, getting a lot of food from unsafe sources, unregistered companies, and so forth is a concern. So it's something we keep an eye on as well. Emily? So in the first category is the personal hygiene. This is probably one of the biggest ones that we like to focus on during my inspections, and it's making sure that everybody not only is washing their hands, but washing them properly and having the right tools to do so. So we need to make sure our water is the right temperature, needs to be at least 100 degrees, that everybody has soap, that everybody has paper towels to wash their hands, because you know as well as I do, you don't give them paper towels, they're just going to end up drying their hands on their dirty apron and creating that cross contamination. That's going to go a long way in creating some foodborne concerns. Yeah, so that's certainly something. And then while I'm in there as well, I'm keeping an eye on the habits of your staff and making sure that they're washing hands when they're supposed to, when they change their gloves, when they come back from the bathroom, all those things. So it's certainly something that we need to keep an eye on as inspectors, but more importantly, because I'm only there a couple hours a year, that the operators are really focusing on this. I'm going to throw out a statistic which is not accurate at all, and someone can speak up, Emily or Isabella. 80% of all the communicable diseases around the world can be prevented by hand washing. The contamination, the contraction of it. It's very, very important to do that. It's certainly one of the best ways to keep your customers and employees safe. Norovirus, as you know, is one of the big illnesses right now, which is highly transmissible in food service establishments. And the best way to prevent that, again, is through hand washing. Emily? So if we're washing our hands, we're also wearing gloves. So we're not having bare hand contact with any food. You certainly are welcome to handle food that's going to be cooked. So any contaminants that are there that are left over from cross-contamination aren't going to be transferred. And if they are, they're going to be cooked off the salmonella, and everything that could be there gets cooked off. You also want to make sure you're changing your gloves with a pretty good frequency, especially if you're changing tasks. Certainly want to handling raw chicken. You don't want to handle anything else. So you want to change your gloves. But if you're making a salad and then you're slicing some tomatoes and then a cucumber, you're welcome obviously to wear the same gloves. But it's when you're changing the tasks that it really becomes pretty important. Emily? And we touched on preparing food, which encompasses a whole bunch of different tasks throughout the whole course of the procedure. So from all the way from, when you first take it out, you start cooking it, you're thawing it and so forth. We'll touch base a little bit as we go on each of them, but these are the 5 main categories that need to be maintained and watched throughout. Emily? Cooking, we should all know how to cook things properly. Everything has a safe minimum temperature that we need to cook everything to. The theory behind that is that all the bacteria, the viruses, the so forth, the parasites that may reside in food is cooked off at certain temperatures to maintain the food safe. So, a ham, fully cooked things, to reheat them, we want to keep them at 140 degrees. Beef and lamb on the steaks are 145. Won't bore you with all the details, but we want to make sure that when we're pre-cooking chicken and cooling them off to put on a Caesar salad or something like that, that we're making sure that we're cooking them to the right temperature. So before we store them, they've already killed all the bacteria that needs to be killed. And we're maintaining that through all of our food and our food products. Emily? Cooling food is something that I've been focusing on a little bit more. There's a lot of establishments that would benefit everybody to review these procedures a little bit. So remember, when you're cooking food, you've cooked it to the 165 degrees or 145, depending on the food product. And now you want to store it for use later or for use the next day, so forth. So we want to make sure once it hits the cooler, we're letting it be around 135, 140 degrees before we start cooling it. If you take the chicken out of the fryer later at 185 degrees and throw it right in the cooler, it's going to take a lot more time for it to go down. So you might want to wait a little bit till it hits around that 135. And after 2 hours, we want to get down to 70 degrees. Going to make sure we break any of our food down into smaller batches, where instead of something this deep, a 6-inch hotel pan, we get down to a 2-inch hotel pan. Cool the food a lot easier. I've encouraged a lot of you to buy ice wands that will help in some of the larger batches to cool down the food. Those are the 2 most effective ways to do that, and certainly an ice bath with the food or with the ice around it in a smaller container really makes a difference. So again, you want to get down to 70 degrees in those first 2 hours. And the following 4, you have 4 more hours to get down to that 40 degrees from 70. A lot of you are excellent at this, but I still see a lot of, a big 5-gallon bucket going into the cooler. So we really want to try to mitigate that. You've all heard the term the danger zone, and that the cooling procedures is where you're going to keep food the longest time in that danger zone. So the quicker we can get out of it, the better. Emily? And the holding temperatures, all of you have something that looks like that. Not everyone has something as robust, but whether it's a full steam table, or whether it's just a soup or a meatball container, they all have the same rules for hot holding. Emily? I'm sorry, I thought I had one more slide on that. So you go back. So you want to make sure that your hot holding is 140 degrees minimum. Make sure your steam tables are on. Make sure they're up high. Setting a 4 or 5 probably isn't enough. You should be able to see the steam escaping from around those hotel pans. And also, as I found in a few of the establishments, please make sure the food is already reheated before it goes in, or cooked before it goes into the steam tables. These steam tables are designed to hold the food hot, not to raise the temperature. So if you want to heat your soup up in the morning, it cannot start in the steam table. It has to start on a stovetop or a steamer to really get where it needs to be. So just remember the food needs to be hot already before it goes in the steam table. Similarly with the cold food. If you're cooking some chicken breasts on the grill and you want to get them ready for lunch to serve on a salad, they need to be cooled in the cooler first. They need to be brought down to that 40 degrees before they hit the cold holding, because again, the cold holding is not intended to bring down temperature, it's to maintain temperature. Thank you, Emily. Next slide. So another opportunity that I've seen in a variety of restaurants is how we properly thaw food. The 3 on the right side are the 3 allowable ways and preferred ways to thaw food. One is simply in the refrigerator. If you're aware of your operation and a good manager, you should be aware of what you're going to need for the next day's preparation or the day after. So you're pulling out the steak tips, you're pulling out the frozen chicken to fully thaw, to prepare to cook and prepare for the next day. The picture on the left were some steaks that I found at 7 o'clock in the morning during inspection. Those were left out all night because someone said, oh, if they're frozen solids, leave them out. And you can't do that because you can't monitor the temperature properly. I know a few of you are probably rolling your eyes, and a few of you have done that, but it's not a good practice to get into. You're allowed to microwave the food to thaw it as long as it's going to be cooked immediately afterwards. And so again, if you need to move things a little faster, thawing it under cool running water is the way we want to do everything. If you don't have the running water, that temperature of that water is going to start to raise a little bit and to stagnate. So we want to make sure that it's running water to maintain probably, 60, 50 degrees of water. So it slowly, warms it up. Emily? I briefly touched on reheating. As I said before, we want to hold food at 140 degrees, but when it's coming from a cold state, to make sure we're doing it right, we need to reheat it to 165 degrees, and that needs to be done within 2 hours. This is again something else that a lot of people could use some little more guidance and education on. Want to make sure that the thick sauces, the chilies, and the soups we're reheating, that we're getting them up fast to that 165 degrees to keep it out of that danger zone as much as we can. Emily? Storing food, touched on that a little bit. Again, we want to make sure of two main things that we're doing storing food. One is we're maintaining that hierarchy of food, that you have the ready to eat here, and you have, say, your fish, your whole muscle meat, your ground meat, and your chicken, for the most part, like that. Because your cooking temperatures, again, are dependent on how well it kills the organisms. So the food with the highest temperature needed to kill the organisms, you want to keep on the bottom. So if there's salmonella dripping on the fish and you cook the fish at 135 degrees, it's not effectively killing the salmonella. So we got to maintain that hierarchy. A lot of you are excellent at that, and I applaud most of you. But where a lot of you need to operate to improve is to make sure that we're dating our food and labeling it. It's wonderful if we have labels that says what it is, but we really need the dates so that you know how long the food's been there, that it's not been sitting there forever, and that we can rotate properly. If there was sort of one thing that I could pick on that seems to be fairly universal, it's that. So if we could all work on that, we'd all really, really appreciate it. Emily? I've already touched on that as well. I think that slide might be out of place a little bit, but just remember that danger zone. These can come in little magnets. You can get these online for free. You can make little pictures to put on your refrigerators and so forth as a reminder to all of your employees of the importance of this. Again, the longer you keep food in that danger zone, the more the bacteria is going to grow. So keeping things hot over 135 and keeping them cool under 41 is incredibly important. Emily? Um, it's a lovely picture, and I hope I don't see that very often in most of your restaurants. But this is, a good example of what comes from that hierarchy of food, but certainly in the cross-contamination as well. So we want to make sure that we're keeping these things as separate as possible. That's obviously ready-to-eat food that was under some steak, I presume. So if these things do happen, please throw it away. I'd rather not see a do not use that should have just been simply disposed of, unless it was a manufacturer and distributor problem. But we certainly want to make sure that we don't see that, because that sign can fall off. Someone can make a mistake and still use it. So we just want to be careful of doing things like that. Emily? And we want to make sure, obviously, that everything is clean, everything is sanitized. A lot of you use bleach, which is fantastic. It's a great cleaning agent. It's cheaper than a lot of other things, and is easy to obtain. A lot of you also use the commercial products from Ecolab or any other companies, the quaternary the quaternary sanitizer, or even the Steramin, I think that's called, little tablets that you can buy at Restaurant Depot. They work great. I always advise not to use them because you have to end up putting a whole bunch of tablets in and cost you more money in the long run. So if you're able to contract with a company like Ecolab, that's even better. But if you want to use bleach to save some time, fantastic. But we want to remember that to be able to, if we want to sanitize properly and clean properly, we need to make sure we have the buckets out, full of the solution, tested properly to be able to be used by your staff. So it's a good idea, during your morning walkthroughs, just train your staff. As soon as right before you open, those buckets need to be out and the rags need to be inside of that bucket at all times. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. If you use your rag to wipe something off and leave it on the counter, it's not really going to do much. Make sure it gets back into the solution. Make sure you're changing it every few hours to maintain the integrity and making sure you're reaching the proper concentrations. Emily? Not a lot of you have 3-compartment sinks. Some of you do. A lot of you should. No, I misspoke that. Excuse me. Forget that. Everyone should have a 3-compartment sink in their establishment. We got to make sure it's being used properly. I see a lot of people washing in just one and just spraying it down. You need to make sure you have distinct bins labeled. Well, ideally, we want to have it set up in the morning so that bin is full of the sanitizer water. So there's no possibility for any mistakes. So then people know where they're washing, know where they're rinsing, and know where they're sanitizing. And make sure that sanitizer bin is tested, just as you did with the buckets. And just make sure that your staff is keeping the food submerged in that sanitizer water for at least a minute. Because we've all seen you quick rinse, dip, and put over here. That's not doing anything. That's not effectively killing the bacteria. So just want to make sure your staff is maintaining it in that sanitizer for that minute. Emily? All right. These are my favorites. Some of you have known me for a while, know that I have a few pet peeves, and I think 2 of these are some of my bigger ones. Can openers. That one on the top, that's an older blade, probably should have been changed by now. But a lot of people don't recognize that. You open up your can of pizza sauce for all the pizza restaurants on this call, or anything that you're going to open. If you're not wiping that down, then that leftover tomato sauce is going to be on your blade, and then you're going to open something else, and that's going to grow some bacteria. It's going to do something, and it's going to create problems down the line. So please make sure your can openers are done. Ice machines is my other big concern. Make sure that they don't end up looking like that. We want to keep them much cleaner and sanitized well before it gets to that point. Ideally, you hire a company to come in every few months, but of course that gets pricey. So even if it's once a year or every 18 months that you get a professional company in, and on the off times that you're doing it yourselves. If you empty it and do a good scrub with sanitizer, that's fantastic. But if you can Google and find a YouTube video about how to really, use the chemicals to run the systems and everything, that would certainly be beneficial. It's also surprising to me the number of deli slicers that we have in the communities that I do the inspections for. They're not just for grocery stores anymore. A lot of people like the freshly sliced meat. I know there's a few places in town that have them. So it's very important to make sure that those are cleaned properly. Want to make sure they're done at least every 4 hours. And then certainly between products, if you're doing a roast beef to a cheese or something like that, you really need to be able to clean it properly between each use. There's a lot of bad things, specifically listeria, that can come from deli meats. So being able to get that off of the slicers before it can create problems is very, very important. Emily? And purchasing safe food is the last of that category that fit into these priority violations. As I said, it tends not to be much of a problem up here in the Northeast and specifically in Northborough area. It's a bigger issue down in the West and down the South, where we're closer to some of the other countries that like to import a lot of food, where they have less regulation, less stringent regulations than the United States. So I want to make sure that we're buying only from reputable suppliers. Everybody who uses Cisco or PFG or any of the other major companies, or go to Restaurant Depot, pretty much everything they have, you're never going to have to worry about. So remember to inspect your deliveries when they come in, making sure the food looks like, well, that's maintaining the right temperature, that it looks undamaged. And I know it can always often hurt the operation a little bit, but don't be afraid to send food back to say, no, those are all damaged or those are out of temperature. And you go without for a day. Your customers will understand. We know that's not true, but we can pretend. Yeah, so as I said, take temperatures and make a point of trying to get the food away as quickly as possible. I know a lot of you are either single operators or have very small staffs. I understand that, I get it, but we need to make sure food gets put away, especially frozen stuff. If you have some fruit that's coming in, if they deliver it, they put it on the floor, just make those efforts to get it up and away and off the floor into refrigeration as quickly as possible. Emily? No, just a fun little picture. I guess there's really not much there, but that's a good example of some of the things, if you're not paying attention, of what can happen. So the person on the right doing her due diligence, checking all the products as she's coming in. Person on the left has a whole bunch of problems that are a lot harder to solve after your distributor walks away. Once you've signed that invoice, there's very few people that are gonna, be helpful and try to fix the problems for you. So just try to avoid the problems before they become problems and catching them at the door. Emily? Okay. I've talked a lot and I've gone fairly quickly. I apologize if it went too fast or if I'm giving too much information. Before I went any further, just curious if anyone had any questions, any comments, anything that I missed or might want to address or anything like that. I have a feeling no, because everybody knows their food safety backwards and forwards. You don't need me to repeat this for you, but I'll give you a second anyway. I'll take that as a no. So as I said, the priority violations were what we used to call the critical violations. Those are the ones that are probably going to give you the 5 points off of your inspection and that have a quicker turnaround time. The priority violations require probably a 24-hour remedy, if not on the spot. Certainly that blood that had spilled onto the lettuce, we can fix that one right away. If your sanitizer is too weak, we can fix most of that right away. And I think we all do a pretty good job of that. The second tier of the violations are just called the priority foundation violations. They all affect food safety, but not as directly as a lot of the other things do, except for maybe for Mr. Remy there with the hat, depending on how many of him and his family are there. Next slide, please, Emily. So one of the first things that we've been finding that I've been working on a little bit more with a lot of you is to make sure we have all of our proper postings up at the front door. So we want to make sure that you have your ServSafe, your Food 360, whoever it is, that your manager certified posted up at the front. Your certificate of allergen awareness training from Massachusetts posted up there. If you have over 24 seats, you need to have your choke saver, so that should be posted up there as well. Every one of you has a food permit, so that should be posted up there. And the one thing that's been missing a lot that I wanted to focus on is that other sign there. It says a copy of the most recent health department. Doesn't say that, but it should say health department inspection report is available upon request. That was added to the merged food code in 2018. So that should be up there along with all the other postings. So your ServSafe, allergen, choke saver, your food permit and that. So there should be 5 things up front. Anybody who has more than one person who's ServSafe certified, or excuse me, manager food safety certified, it'd be best to have all of them up there. The 2017 food code does require that more people are ServSafe certified. So it's good to get on board with that, because on my short list is to update Northborough into the 2017. Might take a little while, but the more we can start to prepare, the better. Emily? Strangely enough, pets is not a critical/priority violation, unless they're live and running over your counters. Then we'll have a different conversation and a different way to handle it. But if we're seeing evidence like we do on the left-hand side with just some droppings, something I've been focusing on a lot is that middle picture of the doorway that has a little bit of sunlight. As we all know, mice and rats can get through, pinholes of that, and a lot of your back doors obviously open into your trash areas where the garbage goes, or your grease trap. So you get a lot of that grease spilling out in the back. So you really want to make sure that there's door sweeps, that the cracks are filled. If you're in a big like a complex, you're certainly the complex owner should be happy to help you with that. And if not, certainly make sure that you're looking at it on your own. The other thing that's not on here is please keep your doors closed in the summertime. I know it's hot. I know it's uncomfortable. I know a lot of you are miserable in your kitchens, but we don't want flies. We certainly don't want mice or any other rodents scurrying their way in. So please keep your doors closed. And the other thing maintaining outside is maintaining your dumpster areas clean. That's going to be a little excessive. Mice are going to love that and want to harbor and build their little nests in there. So I want to make sure they're swept and cleaned, that your dumpsters are covered, that the drain holes are open so the liquid can pour out everything that's covered and sealed as best as we can, and certainly emptied with some consistency, so we're not building that refuse up for too long and making a massive attraction of pests. Emily? As we said, good hygiene goes hand in hand with the priority violations from earlier, but I just wanted to touch base on it again, just making sure everyone's wearing hats, that everyone's wearing clean aprons. He's pretty clean, I think, but just make sure that if we're starting to get soiled, we get rid of things. And then we shouldn't have any, if we have painted nails, that we're wearing gloves. You're supposed to only have a wedding band and a medical bracelet ID. Certainly seeing a lot of more jewelry out there these days, but just something to keep an eye on. Not allowed to have it. People, you don't want any possibilities of contaminations anywhere. Emily? All right, want to make sure also that we all have the proper food safety equipment. Having thermometers is a necessity to be able to maintain your temperatures. You can't guarantee that everything is the right temperature if you're not consistently monitoring. So when you open in the mornings, you should be taking temperatures, and throughout the course of the day, making sure your cooling equipment or your hot holding equipment is maintained and working properly. So please make sure you have thermometers on hand. For those of you with dishwashers, you can either use that temperature measuring device that I use as well, but you can also get those little temperature dots, which will just go on the 6 pan or the utensil, runs through and will turn black or turn orange depending on which one you buy, to make sure that we're running the right temperatures. Make sure we're keeping an eye on those dishwasher temperatures. If your dials aren't working, call Hobart or whoever it is to come and fix it. Certainly very important to make sure that our dishwashers are working right. We've also had a lot of conversations about the thermometers inside of all of the cooling units. If they have a digital thermometer, fantastic. But a lot of us are using repurposed Coca-Cola or polar beverage coolers that don't have external temperature devices. So we want to make sure that everything has one of those. If you have a walk-in, I would appreciate if you have one anyway, even if it has an external, because those don't always work, because the sensors can get knocked off a little bit more. So just the ability to be able to take temperatures, having backup and redundant systems is important. Because if you don't know your cooler went down, who knows how long your food's going to be out, and you're going to be wasting hundreds or thousands of dollars throwing things away and potentially creating some foodborne illness concerns for your customers and your staff. Emily? Chemical holding, chemical storage, and chemical labeling is what I wanted to just quickly address here. Certainly, please, and everybody's been pretty good at this, your chemicals certainly on the bottom shelf, away from food as much as you can, depending on the size of your operation. If you have a mop area or a service area, fantastic. Keep it all in there. If it has to be out anywhere near other food. Again, bottom shelf, as far away from things as possible. Spray bottles of chemicals, I know a lot of habits is to hang them on the wire racks or the metro racks or something like that. Please keep those down. Accidentally hit the spray bottle, spray some stuff. Now we're talking about chemical contamination on the chicken salad, and we don't want that. Please make sure they're all labeled. We're finding that a lot as well. If you're not buying the pre-made ones from another company or Restaurant Depot or Ecolab, please make sure, even with a marker, we're writing sanitizer, bleach, Windex, something like that, because we want to keep that all out of the food. It may not create a foodborne illness per se, but it certainly could still make somebody sick. Emily? So again, that was the second tier of violations. We had the priority violations, which are your criticals, your priority foundations, which are important but less critical. And now we're just going to spend just a couple quick minutes on core violations, and we're almost done. So I appreciate everyone's time so far. These are the less important violations that may not directly impact food safety, but they certainly can, depending on how long things go, and depending on where they are, if there's a risk of cross-contamination and so forth. Emily? So two of the main concerns that I tend to look for are your gaskets, because those can be touch points. So every time you're opening doors and you touch inside of it, and food's getting stuck in there, and that can certainly create some hazards as we go. And a floor that looks like that, is that creating a food safety issue? Not necessarily, but it depends on why the floors look like that. What's caused that? Was it proper mishandling? Was it other cleaning issues? Certainly can be a slip, trip, and fall hazard. So we certainly want to make sure we're keeping our entire operation, from the counters and the equipment, as well as the gaskets and everything else, and of course the floors and so forth. Emily? This is something we're going to focus on a little bit more moving forward. Is making sure that we're all using our grease traps properly, that we're maintaining them. It's something that we've been noticing a little bit more. Those of you that are on town sewer that have had a few problems with the fog, the fat oils and grease going into the system. And certainly if you have a septic system with external grease trap, there's certainly a lot can happen. So we want to make sure we're maintaining them. So what I've printed, which I'm going to start dropping off fairly soon, is I've made everybody their own maintenance. You probably can't see it well. The grease trap maintenance log that some of you have. If you have a company that comes out like John Sewer, you can have them fill it out. Or if you're going to do it yourself, we just want to make sure we have accurate records. So that both you and I know how often the grease traps have been cleaned. And I have these little water safe pouches that I'm going to deliver as well. So you can start seeing those coming around soon. So it's just certainly something we want to make sure we're keeping an eye on. Emily? Hey, look, that's it. Appreciate everyone's time. As I said, I just wanted to spend a few minutes to just talk about food safety, talk about the inspections, and what really we're looking for. As I said, I've known about most of you for 18, 20 months now. You've all been fantastic. Everybody's been very receptive, very helpful. I think we're working well together. When the Board of Health asks me how are all the restaurants doing, I say everybody's doing pretty great. Everybody's trying and certainly making the effort. So that's all I can ask, is that we continue to work together to maintain health and safety environments for your customers, your employees, and yourselves even. And that we continue to build this relationship moving forward, and iron out all the details and become very, very safe, productive restaurants. I'll open up, ask again if anyone has any questions or comments or anything that anyone wants to share. Again, everyone's an expert, so you guys know what you're doing. I appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you very much again for your time and attention today.
Michael, sorry,
Yes.
it does look like we have a couple hands
Oh,
raised.
fantastic. I
Do you
can't
wanna
see,
just-
so I didn't know.
If you just want to go ahead and unmute, or Terry, do they need to become a panelist? Oh, there we go.
You're still muted. There you go. I should be able to hear you.
Hello. Hey guys.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
I just want to say thank you for the seminar. Everything was great, and it's just nice refresher to see all of the ServeSafe and kind of information just refreshed and everything, as we have to renew our ServeSafes like every so often, everything like that. So just say thank you and everything.
Well, wonderful. We appreciate that very much. Thanks for all the work that you do as well. You're one of the favorite restaurants from our staff around here, so keep up the
Thank
great
you.
work.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Have
Thank
a great
you.
day.
You too.
Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand and then we will add you to our panel. Well, I see no other hands raised, so thank you so much, Michael. This was a really awesome, webinar to remind us, and I look forward to the next one. So thank you so much, Michael, and everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome day. We'll see you soon.